So this is our global live healing meditation, particularly helpful, I would say, at this present time, as we are finding ourselves at a time of global disruption, many global challenges arising, and it's likely that the challenges will remain with us and new challenges will come as we are moving into a period of global turbulence. And that's fine. It's a unique opportunity for spiritual awakening, a unique opportunity for disidentifying from the egoic mind and finding the transcendent dimension to who you are. The motivation for awakening, for going deeper, grows for human beings as the challenges grow. And this is the reason why this is potentially an auspicious time. When humans are not being challenged, then the motivation to evolve is not there. It's lacking because you're relatively comfortable in your little comfort zone. But when you're taken out of your comfort zone, when things get disrupted, a huge amount of uncertainty comes into your life, loss comes into your life, or the possibility of loss, and that's often the same thing for people because the possibility of loss is a projected future, and you suffer just as much as if you were already in that situation, which may never happen. But all these things potentially become the motivating force for deep, profound inner change, for a shift in consciousness, for a step forward in the evolution of your consciousness, which is the consciousness of humanity. So we need to rise up to the challenge of our present time, because if we don't, or if you don't, then it will affect you in a very unpleasant way. You suffer more and more, as already millions of people are experiencing suffering. For example, an enormous amount of fear in the collective energy field. Many people are in a state of fear, for example, connected to the virus. And so there's a disruption that occurs on the outside, and there's also a disruption that occurs in human consciousness. The most important realization is to become aware of the fact that the most primordial thing in your life, ultimately, the one thing that determines how you experience your life, or your reality determines how you respond or react to events and situations and circumstances, the most primordial fact is not what happens around you. The most important factor is your state of consciousness, the state of consciousness with which you meet the circumstances of your life, the situation of your life. And so if people live unconsciously, they're not aware of this, it's very easy to become a victim of your circumstances. And many, many humans are victim of their circumstances. What does that mean? Their inner state of consciousness is completely determined by the external world, by other people, by what happens on the outside, both their personal situation and the collective situation in the world. So they're at the mercy of circumstances. Even on the smallest level, at the mercy of another human being. You meet another human being who is angry. If you are not sufficiently present, this human being who is angry will trigger the same emotion in you. And so you are at the mercy of somebody else's state. That's just a small example. And it happens all the time. And then you have whatever you absorb through the media these days, the mainstream media, social media, and mainstream media, for example, generates an enormous amount of emotion. It's there because emotion sells. It sells. People tune in. It has an almost addictive quality to it. And so without knowing it, I don't believe the people who run the media, the mainstream media, are probably not aware of what they're doing, but they themselves are in the grip of this collective energy field underneath the surface of things, and there's a huge amount of collective fear running through. And if you're not sufficiently present, then you have no immunity to what goes on around you, and you are susceptible to catching, so to speak. I'm not talking of a virus, because there's another kind of immunity that is of a different kind, that is within your consciousness. You are then at the mercy of whatever mental virus is floating around in the collective energy field. And without knowing it, it infects you. So you absorb by watching an excessive amount of news, television, or whatever device you use. You absorb all that collective energy field that you can't see it. It's underneath the surface of things, and you're then taken over by a mental, emotional energy field without knowing it. You think that's you. You're identified with this collective energy field. So you've been taken over by what could be described as a virus, a mental emotional virus. And you find yourself in a state of either fear or a state of anger or anxiety. And that's this, when you identify with that state of anger or anxiety or fear, you become it, so to speak, or it becomes you. It becomes part of your identity. And spiritually speaking, we call that unconscious living. To be unconscious is to completely identify with a mental emotional energy field. Identify means you seek yourself in it. It takes you over. You don't know yourself except through that. Your consciousness is completely identified with that energy. And that's a terrible state to be in. Now, a state of quite normal. It's very important then when this becomes more and more unpleasant, fear grows, anger grows, then it's easier for humans to suddenly become aware of what's happening to them. And that is the motivating force that helps people to step out of the identification with the collective streams of emotional mental streams. So that's the most vital thing. You need vigilance so that you are not drawn into these unconscious collective energy fields, which are really very much like a mental virus.